Mm-hmm.
Trent
I know he said he wasn't sure. So, well, here we are, and sorry for the delay for those of you that have been awaiting patiently. Let me see if we have anybody started a pop-out chat.
I did.
I will now. Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, Internet.
Yeah, here we are. We're good to go. I'm here is the link to the pop-out chat. All right, yeah, I just okay, so I'll have to get that off.
Now that Myrr is here, he's always here. He's
Yay,
always with
there's
us.
Myrr. Hey, Myrr. Good to hear from you. Okay, so, well, TC, you'll do the heavy lifting here with this this topic.
Oh, that's fine. I was just I have an interesting backstory behind it. So yeah, I'm actually excited for this one. I was daydreaming at work today, going, I don't want to be here. What are we going to talk about tonight? I don't know. I'm just going to sit here and stare into space for a while.
Yeah, see,
I have some ideas. But like, I really think, TC, that this works better for creative minds, and I believe that you have one of those.
Well, it's one of those where they're basically games that I know will never come to fruition, but mainly because of licensing issues, and it's probably going to be a window into my childhood to a certain extent. And yeah, but we'll get there. And it basically all came out of going to finding a pinball museum near my work. Yeah, and just going, they had like 120, you paid $15 to get in, everything was on free play, and they had 120 tables and they were all ranked by year. So they had like tables from the 60s all the way to like the newest machines available. And just going through these old pinball machines, I'm like, I remember this. Why did they make games like this? So yeah, so it's just basically a trip down memory lane for me. So I'm actually very excited for this episode. We'll see if you guys can't keep up.
I'll do my best, dude. I've been thinking about a few things, but when it comes to creativity, I think you're gonna outshine me. So yeah, we'll let that get us started then. 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, a podcast about board games. I'm the host of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, Joe Sallin. I'm joined tonight by TC Reed. How you doing, TC?
Very good. Kind of surprising we're recording on Monday, but I am down.
Yeah, you could do for a little bit of an infusion of the old politicking back and forth about things that don't really matter or affect anyone.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah. I can do for an early one of these.
This wasn't our episode on SJWs?
No, it's not, Andy. Andrew Dennison there.
If we do that one, I'm just going to hide under the desk here and let you guys have fun, because I will be ground zero for ammo on that thing.
Oh, yeah. No, like somebody in our game group linked me like a YouTube video for someone's comments on Scramble to Africa.
Oh, no. That
I immediately... I immediately responded. I'm like, how many brain cells am I going to lose if I try to watch this?
And the fact we're all white guys we would just be fodder for the cannon, man. That's all we would be.
It can't be worse than that one.
We're already turning into fodder for the cannon. Yeah. All right. So, and then wrestling the topic back into his hands.
We're not going to talk about Scramble for Africa? You sure?
We talk about board games, and we try to avoid topics that might drain the joy from the conversation sometimes. So anyway, that's, because we're in this hobby to have fun and to enjoy ourselves, and also, to be good people. And it can be a struggle to do all those things at the same time, especially when you're dealing with a host of ne'er-do-wells and
ne'er-do-wells.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, the way I was acting around my children this afternoon, my daughter looked at me and went, "I feel sorry for people that have to podcast with you today."
Straight from the mouth of a child. Oh gosh,
Anna, I appreciate the sympathy.
I was like, I got a crappy night's sleep, so when I get like fatigued, there's a certain level where like I go past being tired to just insane.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not there yet? Okay.
I was singing Journey songs to him this afternoon, and they were.
Oh my god! Well, let's go ahead and sing those and see if we can get some copyright infringement going on. Yeah. I think I got some Journey around here, maybe.
Nice. Well, we are going to talk about the games that exist only in our dreams. How about it that the game, the topic that's all about our dreams, starts out in a nightmare?
With Andy, that's not a stretch at all.
We'll be talking about games that for whatever reason we don't believe that they're realistic to feel that they might become a thing, but they're ones that, at least as far as we know, are not a real game, but they are at least a sort of an embryonic idea for a game in our heads. Does that sound right, TC? Did I
basically it's if anybody was ever curious of what kind of game I would envision playing that doesn't exist, I don't know if this is going to be a good journey or a terrifying one, but we're going to settle down it nonetheless.
Yeah. Yep. It's going to be like trying to bring He-Man to the to tabletop.
Nothing that popular.
Yeah. Oh, I had a kid troll me today. He sent me when you get an email from a student and it's just a tiny URL, probably shouldn't click on it. Just probably shouldn't. It was He-Man, and it was a video on YouTube that had over 150 million views, and it was He-Man like lip synced with lots of like rainbow colors in the background to that song by the Four Non Blondes from the 90s, like that, "Hey, what's going on?" It actually made me laugh uncontrollably as everybody emptied my room. That was because the bell had rung, not because they were scared of me or anything. So.
But it didn't have to be mutually exclusive.
No, of course not. They couldn't be the same thing happening at the same time. People just happening to walk out of my classroom when the bell rings.
They all look at it and go, "Oh, thank God the bell rang!" Run!
Hey, yay. It was a pretty good. It was pretty good. It felt like I got rickrolled, but the 2019 version of it. So, well, that's going to be what this topic feels like, I guess, or maybe that's what this part of the show feels like. Welcome when we record on Monday.
Welcome to the podcast about board gaming that will be as close to Monty Python as we will ever get.
Wow, that's really high expectations there, Andy. That's a hard bar to shoot for.
I think maybe this one will convince Trent never to miss an episode ever again.
Yeah, I was gonna say like if Pauly Shore met Carrot Top and they decided to do a show together, I'm pretty sure that just about crush it. But some sort of like Biodome meets chairman of the board and something that makes you not only never want to see them again, but also swear off of watching movies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, we will review a few board games here. Each of us has chosen a board game to review, as well as the board game to hype, to bookend the topic being games that exist only in our dreams as of the current moment. The Good, the Board, and the Ugly is sponsored by Game Surplus, bringing the world of board games to you at GameSurplus.com. Check them out for an online game store that has all of the wonderful customer service that you would expect from a friendly game store, as well as just a community that has built up around them. So Carmen and Elaine, you're doing a great job there at Game Surplus. And if you do order from Game Surplus, tell them the Good, the Board, and the Ugly sent you. You can get a little discount when you're typing in your coupon codes and check out the podcast pick section there. Anyhow, let's go ahead and get our show on the road. And let's start small. Now, I'm gonna review first here, TC, because it looks like we've almost all chosen small games, with the exception of Andy, who's chosen, I'm sure, a game that he will consider small.
That's like a filler, isn't it?
Yeah. Andy's a Feast for Odin, which is certainly a filler. Yeah, it's a filler for Odin. It's more just like Odin's appetizers, of course, because the main game is yet to come. Yeah, it's gonna be like,
that's what he should do. Like, make the 2-player version, and it's called Odin's Appetizer. Okay, that's part of the episode now. That's the game that needs to be made.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe he'll make a Feast for Odin, like the real Feast Era 2, where you just sit down at a meal to follow your first meal, and it's like twice the length It's the same game. You have to play the entire base game to get there, and then it is the same exact mechanics and everything. And I'm comparing here Feast for Odin to Caverna 2-player expansion.
Or you could do like a feast for Odin and his relatives at an awkward Thanksgiving dinner.
Is that the second expansion?
Oh, that's like a game that exists in my dreams, Andy. I think you're just stealing an idea there from
it's gonna be a feast for Odin with some take that negotiation and
it has to have a hammer.
Yeah, and a hammer and
a feast for Odin in Wichita.
And awkward things will be said.
Mm-hmm. Yes. The social deduction element, the hidden roles, as well as rolling for success with every single action taken, because you never know how it's going to go over.
Yeah.
Well, when I said I'm going to start small, I actually meant my own game because it's super, super short. And I was really surprised. I'm reviewing Barenpark, which I think is funny that they've chosen to use the German title for the U.S. release. They do have all of the different player mats in this game come with the name of the game on it, which is, of course, Barenpark. You're building a park of bears, which is apparently a thing. And, Barenpark is on one of the tiles, but then there's the U.S., which has like a flag for Great Britain on it, and it says Barenpark. And I'm like, why didn't we call this Barenpark? Does it lose a little bit of its luster when we say it in English? Because we really don't, as far as I'm concerned, I've never been to a park for bears. Like, it was something that made the Shut Up and Sit Down review very entertaining, because Paul, who I believe is living in like British Columbia, went to a bear park and acted like when you're going to build your bear park, as if like that's something that you consider, I mean, we have like zoos.
He also really loves bears.
Okay. Well, so that was like legitimate interest, because I thought he was like just so into it. Like he'd lost himself somewhere in the skit. Like that's Monty Python. That's Monty Python, Andy.
Yeah,
that's Monty Python. We're not that, dude. That's
yeah. We're high school students trying to inaccurately quote Monty Python.
Perfect. Bingo. There you go. We're trying to remember the Monty Python lines, and we're just not quite there. So we say everything a few words off, and it just really gets on your nerves.
I've seen like Paul, because I follow him on Twitter, and like he posts all kinds of things about bears a lot. So yeah.
So he legitimately, like, when Barenpark came out, he was like,
yes!
Whoa, this is my game.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Barenpark is much simpler than I anticipated. You start out with is it like a 4x4? It may be a 4x5. I forget. I think it's like 4x4, because it's really not a big plot, and you have like certain pre-printed things on each of these 4x4 grids, and there will be one pit that you cannot cover. There will be like a few other icons, and basically what you're doing is you're drafting bear tiles that are sort of like enclosures, and you are then placing them on your board. You start the game with a single, like, not an enclosure. It's not worth any points. You have like green areas that are like parks, and you start with one of those. And so your first move is just to take whatever you started with and put it somewhere, and that's basically how you're going to choose what you get next. What you cover up determines what tile you can choose, and they're really like, it's very wide open. There's 4 different types of bear tile that are like just different colors, but they of course have, koalas are one of them, which are not a bear. It explains in the rule book that even though it's like 1/4 of all the bear tiles in the game, koalas are not a bear, but everybody loves them because they're cute. Okay, fair enough. Everybody loves their tree floofs.
Unless you're in Australia, from what I hear.
They can get chlamydia. It's really sad. So yeah, that's Australian koalas certainly fighting the good fight. Fight that chlamydia, John Oliver.
I was about to say, speaking of John Oliver.
Yeah. So the tiles that you're going to get, though, you can cover up one specific type. Like you have like a crane, and you usually only have one of those per tile, and that will give you like one of these unique enclosures that is also still one of the 4 types of bear, but it's like a weird shape and worth more points generally. Whereas the rest of the bear tiles are in like descending order of Like they're the same shape. It'll be like a 2x2 square and other stuff. You're taking these tiles because they have points on them, and then once you've taken the 7 gold bear tile, now the next one's worth 6, and so on. And there's like all the way down to 1. Basically, what you're doing is you're going to place these tiles on your Barenpark in the next turn. You're also going to cover up a construction crew to get yourself a new 4x4 grid to place somewhere on your board, and you just go until somebody fills up 4 total like bear tiles, or Barenpark tiles. So it doesn't take very long. Like this game, like it says 30 to 45 minutes on the box, and honestly, I'm thinking like this game, even 4 players, I'm thinking you could get it done with 20 if you really didn't like think over it. It comes with a small expansion that's like sort of the like goals for you to achieve. I would say that that's a pretty necessary thing to play with in the game. It is extra, so I guess you don't have to if you're teaching it, but it's such a simple game. That's what really surprised me more than anything. Like I was really shocked by just how simple this game is, given that it has what seems to be a bit of staying power. It seems like it has the staying power of it just has really surprised me. Like I expected it to be more than what it is. Barenpark. I thought it would be slightly longer, have just a little bit more of like a crunchy aspect to it. I'd heard it compared to Patchwork. I do find Patchwork to be a kind of a crunchier game, I think. I think Barenpark is just really, really simple. And I liked it. I liked it. Like it was refreshingly simple to the point where, I guess I haven't seen anything that's really impressed me that far. I've played it a handful of times, and I just haven't been blown away by anything. I think that it's just fine. And I feel like it's the type of game that, like, when you get done playing it, it's going to be hard to put it away without playing it again, at least when people are first learning it. But I do think that this is, like, an example of a really early gateway game. And I don't have much in-depth thoughts about the entire game because I just really was shocked by how light it is and how quickly it plays. And I suppose that nothing quite jumped out at me as being super impressive or super like you must play this. So I was a little bit, I guess, I don't want to say disappointed, but just kind of surprised that it's as popular as it is on Board Game Geek. Is it the charm of bears and the fact that a Barenpark is, I don't know, like an emerging idea that people are championing as, like, I guess an offshoot of zoos in general, which my previous experience with bears, there's like a Barenpark in the zoo, and I guess I would like to still be able to go see all of the animals at the zoo, including the bears.
Is that a different type of bears?
The differences between the types of bears are pretty much negligible. Like that's, I guess there's not
have the crossbreed between like polar bears and grizzly bears.
Well, there's an expansion that's out that's like basically adding grizzly bears, but I have not played that, and really the theme here is nominal. Like it's really not. There's not any theme to it.
But okay, I will buy the game if they have the crossbreeds because I totally want a tile that says Pisley on it.
Okay, all right. I was wondering where you're going with that.
Or growler bears.
Yeah, they don't have them. They don't have them handy. And as a matter of fact, there's no theme to this game.
Now, Barenpark, I've played a few times and I joined it. And I think it's mainly because of the designer. The designer on this one, I think, is, let me take a look. It's like
Still Walker Harding and Cacao and Imhotep. And
yeah, he's done a lot of games that initially you're like, well, this is really simple, but they're good quality games with depth to them. I mean, I still have Archaeology, the card game. I still play the crap out of that thing. And if I'm with a group of new people who are new to the hobby, breaking out Archaeology, the card game, is an easy way to introduce concepts like market, trade, and all that stuff. Imhotep to me is the ultimate cube pusher because those cubes are freaking huge. I mean, if I'm playing a cube pusher, I'm bringing out Imhotep. And there's another one he did. What was it? It was Cacao. I really liked Cacao. Cacao was good.
Cacao's like so many expansions.
Yeah, but Cacao's in those games you're like, huh, that wasn't too bad. I would not mind playing it again. And you play it again and again and again and again. So, I have a soft spot for this designer just because his games are so easy to teach with people who are wanting to learn, get into like more complicated Euro style games.
Gotcha. I did recently play Gingerbread House, and I would say that comparing. Okay, so I'd already played Gingerbread House, which was kind of the same idea, where when you cover things up on a on a tableau sort of thing in front of you, when you cover things up, you get whatever you're covering up. And I would say that here, maybe I wasn't impressed with it because I'd already seen it in Gingerbread House. And really, honestly, I think that Barenpark is better executed than Gingerbread House. I think it's a better game that is smoother, plays quicker. And I really didn't, Gingerbread House did not impress me that much. TC, if you've not played that one, I could totally send it your way. It's like, yeah. If you really like Phil Walker Harding, man, maybe it'll have the charm for you that it just kind of did not have for me. Now, I will say that Sushi Go Party, is just, I think, phenomenal. I think that it is it's my choice of a starting drafting game. That's by Phil Walker Harding. So, he seems to really be this sort of first game you play in the hobby is where the sweet spot is for Phil's design. So, Cacao being maybe an even simpler take on, there's more going on there, but it's kind of like Carcassonne a little bit. It's a really simple tile laying game where there's more restrictions than Carcassonne, and there isn't any sort of weird scoring that you're like, how does that work? Everything is really basic, and then you can add 1,000 expansions to make it not so simple.
Well, there you go.
Does it have a catapult expansion?
No, but it has a castle. No, I made that up.
I was gonna say it has a chocolate expansion. I mean, that's pretty awesome. So, and
has a golden temple expansion. Has volcanoes. How bad can that be?
Yeah, that's right. I would say I'll probably come back and revisit Barenpark. I just maybe it's that I'm playing them in the wrong order, right? I'm playing Barenpark was the one that introduced this sort of cover things up to get more tiles. And it really did that really well. And then I went and played Gingerbread House, which is sort of the follow-up, and it just did kind of a similar thing and did it not in not such an exciting way, at least for my taste. So maybe I'm coming at this from I've already tried this game and it was and it those things are kind of improved, but I'm still not sure how I feel about it just because I'm coming at it from this is okay, now what? So I did like my plays for what it's worth, but I think that the simplicity of the system is what's sort of keeping me there and keeping me wanting to try it, especially with lighter gamers and stuff. So Barenpark. And now, keeping it small, let's hear from you, TC, with the little guys that apparently are extremely tied to pheromones and other a complex game based on the smallest creatures.
Yeah, so both my review and my hype are going to be relating to ants. Surprisingly enough, I was not intentional. I just went, oh hey, look, they're both ants. I dug out my old copy of Myrmes. It's a 2012 game designed. It's one of the 2 games this designer did, Johan Levitt. And it's been sitting on my shelf for a while because I got it because it's ants, and I'm like, I really don't want to play anything new. Let's break this out. I brought it to Game Storm and it didn't get played. Sad face. So I subjected my group to it later. And I've been pleasantly surprised by this one because it is such a tight game. The game is played over 3 years. Each year consists of a spring, summer, fall, and winter. And the winter phase is just feeding your colony. So the trick of this game is trying to get your ant colony to be productive enough for victory points, which are leaves, by the way. It's not the victory point track is leaves around the board, while trying to maintain your colony. Because at the end of every winter, you're going to have to feed your colony little green cubes, food cubes. And each year, it increases by 1. So the first year's 4, the second year's 5, and the last year is 6. Now, at the beginning of the game, your little food storage can only hold 4 cubes. And your workers will decrease, your soldiers will decrease that, and you can actually cannibalize your larvae. 3 larvae will be 1 food for your colony. So it's a real interesting economy of building your ant colony, putting them out on the board, laying pheromone trails. I love saying that. That's so cool. Laying pheromone trails. The pheromone trails generate cubes on the board that you harvest, and you use those cubes to either upgrade your colony, to put out another exit to your nest for various different things. But at the end of every round, anything you have in excess of 4 or 6, if you upgrade your food storage, will get wiped. So it's a very tight game. You gotta use what you have, plan on it, use it or lose it, and then try to keep your colony going, because every cube you can't feed in your colony is like -3 victory points, I think. It reminds me a lot of a Splotter game, because you're trying to like, it's just, the game's just brutalizing. You're like, gotta figure this out, but it's crazy. But it's not quite as long. I think we played like, the learning game was like, with 3 players was like 2 hours. Very interesting design. Now, a disclaimer here: the first printing of this game does have some typos on the tiles. There's some misprints on the tiles. That was corrected. You could get an upgrade. I'm sure this thing's like way out of print at this point. But subsequent reprints of this game has this issue fixed. So if you're looking at buying this game, do not get the first edition unless it has the corrected tiles that you had to buy separately. So be warned. Fortunately, the copy I had did have the upgrade tiles in it, because the guy was a completionist that I got off of him. Thank you. That was awesome. But very intriguing game. I would be really curious, Andy, to see what you think of this one. The theme ties in extremely well to the mechanics.
Yeah, Myrmes basically talking me into trying it already. So
yeah, did Myrmes give me a whole bunch of crap for comparing it to a Splotter game yet? I was just curious.
No, I think
he described it as a war game in a square foot of your backyard. And the minute he's like, "Oh, it's very vicious," I'm like, "What?"
It's vicious in that not only can like your opponent take away your pheromone cost, because they can like just spend a soldier and they can wipe your pheromone off the board. And if there's like, if your pheromone has like a victory points on it, you don't lose it, but your opponent gains it, and can like just completely disrupt your chain of movement. It can get nasty. And add to that you're trying to manage like your own colony and not letting it starve to death, while trying to manage like 3 other people on the board messing with you. And it's a very, very tight board. For different player counts, it gets larger or smaller depending on the player count. But very good game. I like it. Plays very differently than March of the Ants. Well, I'll talk about the hype section later. But this is one game I really want you guys to try to see what you think, because it does some things that are pretty different that I found pretty fun in a mean sort of way. Of course, and if you don't like ants, don't play it, because like one of the it has little plastic ant pieces you put on the board, and they're pretty realistic. And when I was playing it up at the game store, people were going, like, no, they're plastic ants. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Like, bugs. I like bugs. Maybe that's why it's not a very popular game. But I thought it's a fun little fantastic game that I recommend. And for it, God, it was being in 2012. I'm surprised that other games hadn't done some of the mechanics that this thing does. So, for what it's worth.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I definitely want to try. I mean, I've played it twice. I want to play it again. It was certainly, like, let's put it like this. Maybe I wasn't the one to be teaching it to the other people I played with. And maybe it wasn't, like, the people that I taught it to ended up, not really... They ended up saying like, oh, they liked it enough, but just never really requesting it again. And I just remember feeling like, well, this was a lot of work to teach. And I thought it was really cool, but I also felt like I don't want to have to teach this again, brand new to somebody new, when I didn't get enough out of it yet, And so I guess I think a lot of it can just, in my case, having the encouragement from you at the time would have helped TC, as well as just having the encouragement from you towards other people before I got to them. Because of course, if you're trying to sell somebody a game, it's, you got to think about everything that person likes. But if they hear it from some other source, somebody where you don't, an unpoisoned well, if you will.
One thing that really helps teaching this game is Board Game Geek has some player aids. That helps a lot, because there are like, I mean, unless you have a player aid that walks you through what each phase of the game is and what each phase does, and just trying to explain all that can be overwhelming. But if you have
4 different phases, and each phase has like, multiple action options and kind of like a different, almost mechanical entire game. It's like 4 different games that are separated into phases.
Yeah, so like the first phase is you put your nurses out to generate more things, and then
Like
the second phase is like put your workers out. Yeah, there's multiple phases of this game, and they have a really awesome little player aid on Board Game Geek I print them out and laminated them because they're so useful. They even have like this player setup, like what to set up at the beginning of each game. Wonderful player aids.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, had I got it played, and it was once at least that I got it played, but I think I might have even tried for a second time or gotten a second time, and it was, I really wish that I had continued trying with it, and it unfortunately just fell onto a pile of this game was a lot of work to get off the ground the first time because I had to read that rule book a couple of times, and then
and the rule book has like several. It's a bad translation. I was reading some of the rules, going, "This does not make grammatical sense." What? Okay.
It's very blocks of text, as I recall. It's very much just like columns of text, which people who look at it from a wargamer perspective are probably like, this will do. But from my perspective, I'm like, diagrams are helpful.
If I had the rule book, I'd read a sentence to you. I mean, the way it is structured makes no sense. But if you examine it in pieces, you go, okay, this is what they meant. It's literally a bad translation, but it's hilarious the way that it's written. It's like, for thou now come now do. It's like something ridiculous like that. I'm like, what? Okay, I think it means do this thing now.
This is what your city does look like, or something like. It's really, I wish I'd pushed through TC because what you described sounds awesome to me. It sounds like an engaging.
And I was trying to remember the time frame. I think I saw you having this game was the time frame where a lot of people were into very less interactive Euro games.
This is very
at this time, Andy, you wouldn't even touch Euro games. You were in the sort of the Euro game retraction phase.
Was it?
I think so. Yeah. As I'm recalling, this is nascent Andy 18xx days. So
could have been
getting you to play a Euro game at this time, I believe, was pretty tough. And so playing any Euro games were kind of. I was in the underground of the Euro games in our group because I had to be there. I had to be living underneath the law, which if anybody knows me, that's totally not how it went. If anything, there was maybe a blowback movement because of how strongly I was really preferring those types of games. So it's now gotten so much into the distant future that I can look back on this time, not really actually remembering it and just trying to throw Andy under the bus.
Yeah, that's what it was for.
It's a Euro game. Well, it was originally published in Europe. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah. Well, I would say that it's just always been, it's tough to get people engaged into a game that they've never heard anything about, especially if it's, if it's not appealing in those immediate ways, the description of it being like a war game fought in a square foot of your backyard is amazing, and I wish I had known that at the time because I'm sure that would have drawn a lot of people towards it that would have much preferred it. As it was, I kind of, as myself, understood it as a fairly procedural. I don't want to say procedural, but it does have procedures to it. But I understood it at the time as a Euro game, and I didn't really describe it as that. I just was like, hey, here's a game about ants, and it kind of walks you. It goes through several different phases, and you're placing out these pheromone tiles and stuff. And I don't know, whatever it was, I wanted to revisit it now. TC, thanks to you.
No, go check it out. I definitely think it's worth a second look.
Oh yeah, I'd give it a shot.
Yeah,
cool. Well, Andy, tell us about the game that we alluded to earlier. That, of course, for you is a filler.
Is filler. Yeah. So I finally I'm going to talk a little bit about A Feast for Odin because I actually got a chance to play this. Not that I was purposely avoiding it. It's just at the time it was getting played in our group. It was the time when it was mostly Joe and me picking games because everyone else would just sit there and stare at each other. So Joe would be teaching A Feast for Odin and I'd be teaching some I don't even know what at that time. Weird crap. So, but anyway, I actually got to play it. And it's a worker placement game where there's going to be basically to score points. You have boards. You do upgrading and changing and gathering of these little Tetris whatever the crap they call them now.
Tetromino, I think.
Tetrominos. You try to fill up your board as much as possible, gaining points. Most points wins kind of thing. We did play this with the expansion as well. So I have not played the base game without the expansion. At least for sort of my money and experience, I didn't find having the expansion there to be like substantially more difficult in any way. So I think if you're on the heavier end of the gaming, like if you're like, do I need to play the base game without the expansion? I think you could probably include it just fine.
I would say, Andy, that play this game. If you have access to the expansion, play it with the expansion. I think it actually improves the base game enough, and I don't think that it really adds much different, new stuff at all.
So anyway, like the main crux of the game is this kind of tetromino placement covering. So it's very puzzly, right? Scoring the most points you can through that. And some ways are a little more obvious than others. There is a feeding mechanic where you have to kind of like line up your little tetromino food tiles to do that. So it's that kind of thing. So this is definitely, in the end, my thoughts on it, where it's definitely in sort of like Yui Rosenberg's like more his current style of game, where what I meant by that, like it was a very interesting puzzle and I enjoyed it on that level, but I really felt no tension at all at any point. Like I never felt like at a point, oh dear God, if they go there, I'm screwed because I won't be able to do what I want to do. So yeah, it's very open, very sandboxy. So kind of like, in a sense that way, like Caverna. So if you're like more in the Caverna instead of the Agricola crowd, probably a Feast for Odin's going to be right up your alley, I would say. It's a very different way of doing things than Caverna as far as the tiles go. And like I said, that aspect was kind of neat and very puzzly, and there definitely like was interesting things to do. I definitely wouldn't turn it down another play if someone's like, we're doing a Feast for Odin, do you want to play? I'd be like, okay, yeah, we'll do that. Like, but it's probably not going to be one I call for myself, just because I'm much more in the tension camp. Like I want that tight tension of looking at the board and looking at another player going, crap, don't go there, don't go there, don't go there, don't go there. Whereas in a Feast for Odin, I felt like if someone cut me off, then there were other ways I could pretty much go about doing exactly what I wanted to do. Maybe it wasn't as efficient as that way, but there was nothing where I was ever really fully blocked from it. So anyway, I can see where the appeal of the game is. So if you like puzzly things and you don't like having your plans like snatched out from under you at a moment's notice, then this is probably a game you're actually going to enjoy a lot. Like I said, I didn't dislike it, but it's at that category that's like, it's a good game, but it doesn't like wow me in any way, but it didn't really it didn't bother me in any way either, so to speak. So anyway, that was kind of my thoughts on it when I played it. Like, yeah, it's something I'd play again. It was enjoyable, but it's not something I'm probably going to be like chomping at the bit and requesting, which is kind of where I thought it would be when I played it anyway. I figured it would fall in that realm. And so, yeah, so that's kind of my thoughts on a Feast for Odin. If you haven't played it, it's definitely worth a play, worth checking out and see what it would be to you and kind of go from there, I think. And if you're in the crowd that likes to have plans and execute those plans and work through that puzzle and don't want a lot of like people kicking over your anthill, so to speak, since we had ants on the podcast there. But yeah, this would probably be way up your alley. I think for me, I would still prefer games more in that Agricola camp most days, because that tension, weirdly enough, having a lot of tension in board games is relaxing for me, which probably says something about my personality.
It's relaxing, or is it refreshing and entertaining? Because I'm thinking, like, do you get more like just bored in the other games, or what?
A little bit bored, but a little bit. Actually, it's a little bit bored, but it also is relaxing. Like for me, relaxing is the way a board game relaxes me is if it requires like intense mental focus. So basically, for me, it requires me a board game becomes relaxing when it requires me to not think about anything that's bugging me right now. And so the tension for me actually helps because it keeps me laser focused on what's going on. And I like tune out anything else that's been bothering me. So it's really weird that it does that. But I found that puzzly games do that less and less for me. That tension has to be there to like hook me on, to make me stare at it and be like, oh God, are they going to do that? Are they going to do that? For example, another way to think of it is like the game Three Kingdoms Redux, like very Euro-y game, but that auction worker placement mechanic has me just glued to that board the whole time. And for me, that's like very relaxing and rejuvenating to kind of be pulled in like that. And I don't know, like I said, I just find that like puzzles in and of themselves don't do that for me as much as they used to. They're still very enjoyable. It just doesn't hit that next level for me. That's just kind of like, that puts a game squarely in my wheelhouse, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's a good game, and I see where a lot of people get enjoyment from it, and I would totally agree with that. Like I said, I'd play it again. I had no complaints. It's just one of those where like it didn't really fully click with what I'm sort of looking for in a lot of games. But I thoroughly enjoyed the game on its merits it had, for sure.
Yeah, for me, Andy, I think what consumes my attention and focus and keeps my mind off of any other things, which I think is kind of what you're referring to, and I understand that that's the same angle I come at it from. That like
right.
The game gives you something so that your mind is consumed entirely by something that is not all of the real problems you have to deal with. Mm-hmm. And I mean, for many people, like it's just adding stress onto their life, and so it's like a frustrating thing. And I definitely relate with you in that you want something to basically function as a distraction, as an extra thing where I take this burden on willingly, whereas the other things are stresses you don't choose. So I get that. For me, the tension, is something that entertains my mind. Which certainly in this game is not tension. I guess the one place where I'm kind of like, I do not like Caverna over Agricola. Like it is
for sure
for me much the same game.
Yeah.
And that's for that reason. I'd much rather play Agricola than I would play Caverna. I prefer it in every aspect. I've not played with a new expansion, the Forgotten Folk for Caverna, but I leave the door open for that. But like I like Agricola like 10 times more than I like Caverna. Mm-hmm. And yet I still like Feast for Odin. And I honestly think that had you played this before the expansion came out, I think the expansion actually adds a little tension. I think that because it has, well, at least it's not so much of an external tension of like, are other players going to take that? It does. I think that it does kind of balance the board to a point where players tend to compete more. At least it felt that way. It felt like that the spots were just more competitive. But I also think that that entire column of actions you can only take when you pass, I thought that was like a really cool way of sort of.
Oh, I did like that mechanic. Yeah.
It sort of like forces you to be like, well, if I can't do anything decent, like there's like one of the old strategies was just, like take like one or two player actions the whole time, with just one or two meeples. And it was a little bit, I don't know, draggy and boring. It could be. And I think here, you've got a bit of tension, at least a sort of pressure to try to propel yourself towards this last action that can be kind of a pretty big swing of a decent move that's much more powerful than other actions because it has to be the last thing you do. So I
would agree. Like that last board, I think had that not been there, I think I would have liked the game less. Mm-hmm. Because that did add an interesting situation of, let's say I had three workers left, and this action I want to take on the that other board required two of my workers to work. And you could look around and say, okay, but somebody else actually looks like they're going to go for that space. So do I now sacrifice one action so that I get it for sure? Or do I try to like use all of my workers before I go there? Like that was an interesting decision, I think. And if you took that out of the game, I think the game would suffer for it personally.
And to be honest, I liked the game a lot before it even had that. And I liked it knowing that acknowledging that I found faults with it, at least in the balance side, with the way that the cards and the occupations, some of them just seemed like really not worth it. The overall, like, I do really appreciate this game. I think that it sits in a spot where it's like, it's Uwe's newer design philosophy of, it's not forcing all players to do the exact same thing and then resulting in, somebody clearly getting an upper hand.
Right.
Because you're all sort of competing towards the same end. Like here, it's much more obscured, like what other players need, what is your best path to victory. And, I did not like any of Uwe's games until Feast for Odin, which Feast for Odin, I think, did enough to sort of entertain me on a personal internal basis with the puzzle of the tetrominoes, like you described, and just the variety of the actions that you can take to impact that puzzle, that I did personally really resonate with this one. And I do still feel that way. And honestly, like some of the people, some of the players that I look towards sort of, I guess I think of the interests of like my little brother, who's one of my primary people that I consider in terms of like, outside of our game group, who else who else plays with me? And I feel like this is like I sit somewhere on the spectrum between Andy, who's like, I think he's going to be about Andy. You'd probably be about the harshest critic of this game because you have something that you're looking for and you know what that is. And it's like tension. And here, this is, it has the same feel as Uwe Rosenberg, but no tension, but you're still okay enough to play it, and I think not exactly a resounding endorsement by any means, but it's at least something. Will, I feel like, on the other hand, I don't think he's even played this game. Maybe he has, maybe he hasn't, but I can just imagine my little brother like really appreciating the game for, like being historical Vikings. I mean, we're talking, we're about to, like, I guess this might be a time to sort of get ready for our topic, because like this is a theme that if you had asked me, like 5 years ago, like had I been thinking, like if you asked me 5 years ago, had I really predicted what I thought was going to be super cool, I think that, like a game that's about like the historical Viking history would be a super cool thing for Uwe Rosenberg to approach with the same breadth of his approach to Agricola, right? I mean, there's just so many aspects to this game. It comes with an almanac to describe all the different things that you can do and how they related to like historical Viking culture. That to me is a pretty wide and cool theme to be able to approach from a realistic resource management, agrarian, where's the fun in that? The Americans at the table say, where's the fun in that? And I don't know, for me personally, I guess I'm going to make that my first game that exists only in my dream, with the caveat that the game actually does exist, and I'm saying my dreams 5 years ago, if I was that good at dreaming.
Right. Well, I guess I'll finish it off with this. Out of the newer style games I have played of his that are a little bit more sandboxy, that being the ones I have played are Caverna, Feast, and Fields of Arle, right? Mm-hmm. I think out of those three, I would definitely put Feast in the upper echelon of that. Like, I would rather play that over the other ones if push came to shove.
Makes sense.
Yeah. All right.
Well, TC, did you have any final thoughts or anything about Feast for Odin? Are you still kind of in the same spot with it, or you ready to talk about games that exist in your dreams? How do you feel right now? Oh no, TC's frozen. That's why we're not hearing anything. I just thought he was so, like, right now his face. For those that can't
there
see,
it goes.
there you are,
sorry.
TC.
I
Yeah,
had a little lag delay. I'm good.
It must have been. Yeah, there you are. For those that were not able to see, it was like TC was like frozen in this hand on chin, like sort of like whimsical face and pose, like he's considering what we were thinking, and I was like, wow, he's thinking really hard about this.
Yeah, I'm pondering for a while.
That was his No, that face is one of two things. Either I am massively intrigued by this, or oh Jesus, this is so boring.
Yeah, it was one of those two. You can exactly tell.
It's my face.
Well, any final thoughts on Feast for Odin, or what do you think? As my first entry on this list of games that exist only in my dreams, caveat 5 years ago, and yes, the game exists in the current day. Your list is going to be a little better, I think, TC. I think.
Yes, I have a better list. Yes.
Okay.
Well, no, maybe better. We'll see.
Ooh. All right.
Mine won't be. That's fine. All right.
Well, TC, tell us about the topic.
Okay, so topic. So, as I alluded to earlier, I found a pinball museum near where I work, and we went.
Pinball.
120 tables from the 60s all the way to modern, and paid $15, and I got to play so much pinball. But I was walking by some of these old pinball machines and going, man, where were some of these games? Why did they make games out of these things? And what happened? I was just thinking, man, there are some games that don't exist that I'd really like to play based on either a mechanism or a topic or a license or something. So I just quickly, because I was bored at work and I was trying to think of a topic, because we got a document like Saturday saying, hey, we're going to podcast on Monday. Do we have a topic? Not yet. Okay, I guess it's up to me.
Oh, sweet of you, TC.
So, yeah, here I am throwing all my co-conspirators under the bus, which is why I do better. So
it was a better idea than anything I had, man. Let's go with it.
Yeah.
Your ideas are scary. They will not be discussed on air. So anyway, so these are some of the games that I wish existed that don't. And they don't for a variety of reasons. Probably the biggest one being no one would buy them but me. So I'll just kind of lead the run on this.
So we just want to alternate one.
Yeah, we can alternate till you guys get done, and I just keep going, and you tell me to stop.
That works.
Okay. So a lot of books now are really close becoming open source, right? Several books have been, which I will discuss later, but one of them I know is getting really close to leaving its copyright so that anyone can use it. And I have been super surprised that no one has really approached this one, because it was one of my favorite books I read in high school. And that was George Orwell's Animal Farm. I have dreamed ever since Coin was announced that someone would take Animal Farm and make it into a game, because let's face it, Animal Farm is just an allegory for the Russian Revolution. That's all it was. But the characters in it, you have Snowflake, you have God, what was the horse's name? He worked and fought for the state, and his
General or Colonel, what was it? It was like something like that.
Yeah, his reward was getting sent to the glue factory, right? I mean, just a brutal heartbreak. But I think it would be such an amazing game. And it would be a great way to introduce people who normally don't play war games or even approach it, much like Root did, with using animals as an allegory for getting people into a conflict style game. And plus it has the the story of the store behind it, and I was just thinking, man, Animal Farm would be such a great theme for a war game that no one has ever done yet. And I do not know why, other than copyright issues, but those copyrights have got to be getting close to being
pretty close to public domain at this point, if not already.
Yeah. And you can even go for 1984 at that point. I mean, come on. But I just think Animal Farm would make a great asymmetrical style war game. I think it'd be fantastic. And
that would be a really cool thing to approach. I feel like Cole Worley needs to. I mean, he's made the Animal Farm, the Red Wall.
Yeah.
There's the Animal Farm expansion, where the woods, the woods gives way towards the agrarian economy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I even played a good game with really crappy production values called what was it? Kill Shakespeare. And I think with a little bit of retheming, that could really really benefit from a theme like Animal Farm being thrown on instead of some obscure comic book no one gives a crap about.
That is such a cool idea, TC. I love that idea of having a coin game themed around Animal Farm.
Yeah, wouldn't it be fantastic? I mean, here comes snow, here comes, and then at the end, like whatever animal faction wins, you can like sit upright and take over the farm and like oppress everyone.
That would be bad to have in my house. Like my daughter had to read that book in like junior English class, and like it literally gave her nightmares.
That's like, it's not too. That's a harsh book to read.
She's also like super into animals, and like gets really bothered if anything horrible happens to an animal.
Okay,
yeah, I can relate with her there.
Watership Down.
Yeah.
I can watch the crap out of like Game of Thrones, right? And I can just watch all kinds of things about human misery, but like you put me in front of planet Earth and like all of a sudden I'm like, how can we watch this? There's just no winners. If the lion gets the deer dies, and if the deer gets away, the lion dies. There just isn't any winners in nature.
Don't look up videos of orcas playing with their food, then that'll really bother you.
Oh, and here I was going through my life thinking that orcas were like the friendliest towards humans ever, never
fine to humans. It's baby seals they fling into the air for sport.
Oh, that's awful, Andy. God. Oh, why? Okay, Andy, your turn now.
So, so baby seal orca, the dexterity.
Oh, no. Oh, that was served up to you. Oh, my goodness. Wow. Like a game of volleyball. Gosh.
Yeah. No, we should not do that. The first one I'm actually going to steal from low player count that they had, because this is a game that totally does need to exist, and it's actually a Euro game. They need to make a economic Euro-style game about being a moisture farmer on Tatooine. But no combat. Maybe there's like blasters. You collect blasters in case the Tusken Raiders raid you, so it mitigates some randomness. But no straight out combat, no Jedis. You are just moisture farming on Tatooine.
What you need is this is a good idea like that, but you need like in Dune where you have like this random sandstorm that goes around the board and messes with you.
Oh no! It needs to be like super like very little low random, just like as anti Star Wars requirement as you can possibly get.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
no, this is something that it will never exist.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's because like literally like the people that hold the license for Star Wars, like they are really like, if you get the Star Wars license, they get a big say on what you do with it. So
a big chunk of the money, so it has to sell so many copies before you even turn a profit on it.
Yeah. So yeah, basically like, no, there will be Jedi combat and there will be blah, blah. But yeah, no, Tatooine moisture farmer needs to happen.
Wow. That is incredible. That is absolutely incredible. So I like it, Andy. I like it, TC. And I'm going to just be depressing here. And I'm going to say that I have a more like realistic thing that's more inspired by my love of a game that already exists, Pandemic Rising Tide, my love of a game that already exists, Agricola, my understanding that the Netherlands are the world's second largest exporter of agricultural products, that being like, food products and like, lots and lots of flowers. And the fact that the size of the Netherlands, if you compare them to all the other countries in the world in terms of food exports, is ridiculously small. Like it's like, the size of one of the, not even one of the larger U.S. states, and yet it is second only to the entire U.S. in terms of its agricultural exports. How is this a thing? And why don't we have like, an economic game that's sort of about the like the way that Kanban was about like this sort of management system in like car factories and stuff? Why don't we have a game that's about what has happened in the Netherlands in terms of the tight connection between the universities that research agricultural, like marketing and, well, not just marketing, but like production, basically. Because from what I understand, they're extremely well connected to the farmers to make sure that every square inch of tilled land, of kept land in the Netherlands is done so, at its highest efficiency possible. I think that a game that deals with the agriculture in the Netherlands, which is strangely extremely, extremely high, that just for its size, coming from the quote unquote grain belt of the United States, that this is something that really interests me. So, and Agricola already has a Netherlands deck, but I think this is more of a modern thing that could be handled. So that's mine for games that exist. Games that, as far as I know, exist mainly in my head. I'm sure that there's probably, well, there could be things. Who knows? Anyway, that's my entry. On to you, TC.
Okay, this one happened because this is one of my favorite games that is out of print and will never be back into print. And because I want to take my daughter to go see a musical. Wicked is coming to Portland. The true story of the Wicked Witch of the West. And that got me thinking, why on earth do we not have a really good game using Oz? And I'm not talking about the Wizard of Oz. I don't want a Wizard of Oz. I want the ones based on the sequels. I want Mombi in it. I want Wheelers. Guys, have you seen the movie called Return to Oz that no one liked? It was like bat crap crazy. And it had like the Gnome King and Jack Pumpkinhead and a talking moose head that all came straight from the sequels to Wizard of Oz. Fantastic book series. It's all open license now, so there's no reason. In fact, that's why Wicked got made. Is can't think of the author's name. He took the Wicked Witch of the West and told the entire story of the Wizard of Oz from her perspective, which is a fantastic book and a great musical, by the way. And one of my favorite games, Chaos in the World is out of print. Well, I have a solution. Can someone take Oz and re-theme Chaos in the Old World so you don't have to worry about the Warhammer license anymore? Because I want to be an army of the Gnome King, and I want to crush Munchkin Land under my thumb. That's what I want. This is the Oz game I want. And Eric Lang needs to hear me on this. He has Cool Mini or not. He can make some fantastic Oz minis from this thing and design however they want. I want a Scarecrow army. I want Mombi's army who can like change heads. I want a Wheeler army going out there. I want to crush Oz as the Wizard of Oz under my foot. That would be such an awesome game. And it would solve two problems I have in one swoop. I want an Oz board game that Eric Lang has designed based on Chaos in the Old World. Boom.
Boom. That's awesome.
Too much?
That is a bit of a stretch, referring to the physical board of what you might make this look like. Like Chaos in the Old World was stretched human flesh.
Yeah,
so.
well, but that's like retheming. See, a lot of people won't play Chaos in the Old World because they don't want to play demons and they don't want to play on stretch can. Well, fine. Retheme the whole dang thing to like a family friendlier setting, but still give it teeth,
Okay. I get what you're saying. Yeah, you're actually talking about kind of cleaning the theme up and making it a little bit less unapologetically brutal.
Yeah.
So, I get what you're saying. Yeah, no, I was thinking that you were going to take like something that I'm associating with, the Tin Man and the Lion and make it into like Murder Ball. But
no. I mean, that would be interesting, but I would more like to be able to play this game and break it out and people not go, oh my gosh, what are you? I said, you're this army of demons, and the one you're playing is the demon of temptation with these weird female figures with crab hands and stuff that seduces people, and you're crushing the board underneath your foot. Yeah, I don't want to play this game. This game looks bad, TC. It'd be a lot easier to break that game out if it was rethemed to something a little bit more approachable.
Be like, look, kids, there's the Yellow Brick Road. It's all fine.
It's fine. Who are you being? I'm the Wicked Witch of the West. We're coming your way.
Comes the flying monkeys.
Yeah, can you imagine your occultists are like flying monkey armies and you're just sending them out on the board? Oh, that'd be so much fun. Yeah, Munchkin Land, no more.
Andy.
Let's see. What's the one in my head that nobody would ever play?
What's the one in your head that anyone would ever play?
Yeah, that's the real question. Literally, what I've been wanting is a logistics game about the human digestive system.
Barenpark is really close.
Probably an Age of Steam map for that.
Yeah. Be like, okay, here's the inputs. Okay, how many can I convert to glucose? Oh, what's coming out the back door this time?
Mm-hmm.
When I first learned Panamax, and it was like, what was it?
Panamax. Oh, God.
You're pushing cargo out a tube. I'm like, guys, are we fantastic game, by the way, but yeah, my observation was not appreciated by my game group that night.
No. A game that has a BM chart that you need to reference.
Well, listeners, this is, if you ever wondered why I'm a middle school teacher, this is the evidence for that.
Yeah. If there's any questions about it anymore, Andy?
Yeah. Or what's the other one I had? Oh no, we'll wait till I come back around to me. It'll work.
I would be interested in a game that dealt with the sort of the peaceful coexistence in the during a time that was like the quote unquote dark ages, as many people might refer to them. In Spain, many parts of it were controlled by Moorish rulers, and it was known as a period of like kind of unprecedented religious tolerance and just cultural tolerance, and I think that it would be interesting to see kind of a and you could take this in terms of the existing conflicts if you'd like, because there was always territorial disputes if you wanted to go in sort of a conflict direction. But I would be more interested in just learning about that sort of time period, and what life was like in sort of an Agricola aspect. And I would say that you take the perspective of Uwe Rosenberg towards he's now done Viking culture. He did the culture following the great the plague in 16th century northern Germany, and where he's originally from. He's done Fields of Arla. He's done a Norwegian fishing village. He's done monasteries. I would love to see him handle this down. I guess it's not exactly his backyard, but I think that would be a really interesting place. I hope he goes on a vacation there or something, because it seems like that almost always propels him to do like he just did Iceland and Reykjavik. And then I would love for him to keep visiting, in that general direction, and get.
So we need to bring him to Iowa so we can get our corn-themed game.
Yeah, I'm sure that he should make an expansion for Agricola that's an Iowa deck, and it would be 5 cards: corn, pigs, and everything else would fit onto 1 card, because that's pretty much what we do here. But
we grow corn to feed the pigs. That's it.
I'd love to see him venture even further south. I would love to see him go into the actual, the way that, because there's still I just watched the movie, and it's on Netflix, called The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, and it's about Malawi, Africa, and about how this subsistence farming, it wasn't just subsistence farming, but they were also selling it, for profit and whatnot. But the way that farming is a big part of cultures all over the world. And I feel like I would love to see, them get treated from those perspectives as well. Cause I feel like there's, just some differences in the way that it looks and works in different places. And I think it would be interesting to see, if it was themed within the same world, if it was a worker placement game, but I'd just be very interested to learn about that. And then why not continue on to the Asian the South Asian subcontinent as well, and even go on to see Uwe Rosenberg deal with rice paddies, because that hasn't already been done, has it, Andy?
Yeah. Well, no, that one was fun too, because
yeah, that was cool. So
my big reel is that and I don't remember that where that actually took place. I just remember it's about doing rice farming and all that, and then I look at half the gods' powers. I'm like, oh, so the gods in this culture were dicks.
Yeah. I suppose farming games to me, like I would love to see farming games from all over the world. The more diverse the location, the more, the more I'd say what would it be like, you know, not covered before. So I mean, I'd love to see Latin American farming, and I would love to see it not dealing with like United Fruit, but rather.
Let's not deal with that whole slavish time frame.
Yeah, and I'm just like, now that I'm thinking about it, like even if you go into that time period, like it certainly was happening. It was even Catholic, Catholic orders were certainly into it. So I don't know. There's certainly some areas that would be tough.
So no sugar farming games there. We'll stay away from that.
Yeah. Yeah, the encomiendas were. Anyway, yeah, so it's I guess that there's certain times and places where maybe like some of the systems that were holding up these industries are not worth necessarily to be dealt with, at least for that being the central driving purpose. I'm a Eurogamer, dude, meaning like when it comes down to it, like, it's I get interested in games mechanically, so it's tough for me to really consider this. And that's why I'm going to hit my, my chess timer here and pass it along now to TC again.
Okay. So, on Kickstarter, you see all these games with minis, these little miniature games, and I've passed on every single one because none of them really catch my fancy. However, if they ever made a miniature game based on this property, I will kickstart the crap out of this thing. I will buy every single little bit of plastic that they produce on this thing, but it will never happen because it's based on an old cheesy 80s science fiction fantasy movie that not a lot of people know. Now I'll describe it and see if you guys can guess what movie this is from. I want a game where I can wield a glaive, fight slayers, travel to the dark fortress, and kill the beast with my redheaded bride. And that is Krull.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was.
They ever made a miniatures game based on Krull?
I like Twirly Blade, isn't it?
Yeah. I saw this movie when I was a kid and I fell in love with it. It is like the dumbest thing you can see now, but oh my gosh, you have like the fire steed you can ride to like fly across the air. You could wield the glaive. The beast comes out, this giant puppet, the beast, and the Black Fortress was like just teleports God knows where, and you gotta go on this quest to find. You gotta go find the Widow of the Web and like lose one of your companions to this thing. And oh my goodness, I would be all over this thing in a heartbeat. It's like that movie is like one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my life. And to this day, it is nuts. I subjected my kids to it. They were like, Dad, how could you like this? This is the dumbest thing ever. But it's the glaive.
Yeah. So follow it up with Beastmaster 1 and 2.
Yeah. I mean,
just a game about like crappy 80s barbarian movies in general. You could put so much into it.
Oh my goodness, and the role playing could do with it, but just the minis, I want I want the whole deal, man. I want my army of slayers and like little things burst out of their head, going to the ground. I want it all. And as an interesting side note to this, the reason this came up is at the pinball arcade, there was actually a Krull pinball machine that there's only 8 cabinets in existence. Because they only made 10, and when the movie tanked, they decided not to move that pinball machine into production. So it's like it's like the holy grail of pinball machines. And when I saw that and played it, I'm like, why was I never able to have a board game based on this? Well, because the movie stunk and it crashed. But for the little kid in me, I was like, oh, I would love to get my hands on a Krull board game, especially a miniatures one.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many cartoons I watched as a kid that were like barbarian cartoons and stuff, and I like tried to watch it like, when the internet came into be and you could see it, and I'm like, oh, I should have left that to nostalgia. I really should have. And I still remember there was one of those barbarian movies like where a guy's like flying a hang glider and you can literally see LA in the background.
Oh, what is that one? Mystery Science Theater 3000 is it's like gore or some piece of junk.
Or they like ride the horses down and there's like obvious 4-wheeler tracks in the dirt.
Guy like sunglasses in the background, like showing where they shoe the horses. Yeah, we could thank Conan the Barbarian for all those horrible knockoff movies that came.
Yeah, and Conan didn't take long to get. Conan the Destroyer, like that is a movie that just should never be mentioned.
Unless you're a Wilt Chamberlain fan and you have to see everything with Wilt Chamberlain. Oh, but yeah, Kroll. That's it. That's an old childhood dream of mine.
Yeah.
All right, Kroll. I have never seen it. Actually, this is, I'm Googling it now. So as I learn about this thing
you watch the trailer, if your face gets all white and your eyes get all white, and you're like, what is this?
All right, well, Andy, to fill the time while I go ahead and try to figure out what exactly this is.
Yeah, actually, this one's a serious one I just thought of. I would like to see a board game somehow related to the fall of the Bronze Age cultures. Like, have you guys ever heard of that? It's crazy. But there are all these like really, for the time, advanced civilizations, right? And they just like all end. And nobody really knows why. But it starts off like around the Mediterranean, all that, and like all of a sudden, like the people that are like 8 months away in communication, you stop hearing anything. And then all of a sudden, like the people 6 months away, you stop hearing anything. And it just, this terror starts working its way down. And like they only said it was the sea peoples, but these peoples were never defined, but they just wiped out everything. Like civilizations were downed so fast that they found one town with the clay tablets with the messages basically to send to the next town of, oh dear God, please help us, still unbaked in the kiln.
Good
like
Lord.
They couldn't even get a message out. That's how fast they went down. And like nobody,
like a bubonic plague, but something that struck.
Yeah, there's something about these sea. The only thing that keeps coming up is the concept of sea peoples, but no one really knows where they came from and exactly how it played out. But like all of these Bronze Age cultures, just boom, 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 gone. And like it literally was like an apocalyptic reset of civilization. So you end up finding like these groups that come back into the area later, and they just think like giants and gods built these cities because just civilization was smashed back to like it's kind of the equivalent, the ancient equivalent of when we say bombed back to the Stone Age. Like, yeah, bombed back to pre-Stone Age was what they got. And just having a game about that would be interesting. Something where a Civ game where just all of a sudden there's like this dread coming your way, and it's like, how can you prepare to maybe survive it?
Yeah,
that would be interesting.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And this would, like, I've got one last one here to share before I'll pass it on to you guys. The thing, like, my linguistics interests, especially being an English speaker, like, English is such an arbitrary language. And for so many years, English was like, basically a proxy of like the French, the Norman like ruler. And so for that reason, like, I think it'd be interesting to see like a developmental, sort of like where you play as basically throughout history, the English language as it is just like basically becoming, its conversion from kind of Old English and into sort of what was like Middle English, which was never really exactly a defined thing. And then modern English, and just all the influence of, largely the, 1066 and, tears to many mothers, like that, that had a very big impact on the language side of things. And I just think, there's a lot of word games and stuff like that, but there isn't really many historical games about language and the way that language is impacted by a lot of the events that happen. And I think that, like looking at one of these types of situations of either contact or conflict from a linguistics point of view, and actually giving players maybe the, control over the different languages that are in contact, and how, like it could almost be like in essence, it could be a two-player, like an influence game, kind of,
Right.
like a Twilight Struggle sort of thing. So that's, I guess, how I foresee it. And you can, of course, it could be, because of its structure, it's sort of like, I think is well suited towards that sort of, GMT's post Total War type games, where it's more into like the modern conflicts and how coin games and like wars of influence and kind of softer wars. So I think language could do for that. And I think that, I gave the example of English just simply because that's what I took a history class in college, the history of the English language. And I think that, you could do the same thing to a certain extent for many languages and many different linguistic settings. So games where players play as a language, certainly as any historical theme, you'd need to kind of choose some ones that are like, you'd have to sort of hand pick them based on your own, what you're familiar with and like what's I guess, here we are talking. I think it could be done. I think it'd be very interesting to see it happen.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
All right, what you got?
Okay, another one. Several years ago, God, this has been almost like 5 or 6 years ago, I played a game called Batman Gotham City Strategy Game. It was a fairly interesting game where everyone's playing a Batman villain, and they're trying to control an area of Gotham City, and then you actually sent Batman out to like mess with your opponents. It was a fairly fun game. It was from WizKids. It was okay, but it started me thinking. I'm like, man, no one's ever done a game based off the Phantom of the Opera. I mean, it's a huge musical. The book is popular, and the book's open domain. And I would love to play the Phantom of the Opera game. And after playing that Batman game, like it'd be kind of fun if they actually rethemed that game, or had a game where like everyone's trying to like run the opera company and make the profit, but like the Phantom came out, and you could like send the Phantom of the Opera out to mess with the other people trying to make a profit off the opera company. But I for whatever reason, it's like the classic Universal monsters that really hasn't gotten a modern board game treatment like Dracula has with Fury of Dracula. The Creature from the Black Lagoon has. I can't think of what went up top, but a Phantom of the Opera game is something I think is missing, and I think would make a really fantastic board game if done correctly. You could even be like someone like secret. Maybe it's a deduction game where somebody's trying to figure out who the Phantom of the Opera is. There was like there was like a retheme of Mr. Jack where they tried that, and it was okay, but I don't know. I think Phantom of the Opera theme board game done really well could be really cool and a lot of fun, and I would buy it and play it in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
I actually still own that game you're talking about, the Phantom of the Opera one. Just that Mr. Jack was cool, but it had just like more spaces than I cared about. Phantom of the Opera just kind of reduced it to like a really small rondel with, like you said, it's not really. It's a simple lightweight game, and you're talking about something.
Yeah,
you're talking about something you can sink your teeth into. So definitely not the game that not that.
Something where like they're like all invested in this opera company. You're trying to like to make the most profit of it, but there's the Phantoms like going around messing with everyone, and you can like send them out to mess with the other players. They're like, ha ha ha! The Phantom strikes you. Like no.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah, you're like the ballerinas won't perform or something, so you gotta do something to get them back in line because the Phantom's messing with them. And nope, the Phantom like hung someone in the back of the theater, so you gotta mess with that, fix that disaster because people won't. And La Colorita won't sing anymore because the Phantom messed with her, so they gotta get Christine out to sing. I think it'd be a lot of fun if done right.
Very cool. Andy, do you have any more to share? I'm like I've exhausted my my creativity. And
I have one more. This is a crazy one.
I have one more serious one I think that's worth saying, and I got dumb ones, but we can leave those for another time. What I would really like to see, honestly, because I haven't found something that feels like it's done it right. When I look at a lot of like history of war stuff, this kind of war game world I've been getting myself into, the battles are neat and all of that, but what I actually find really intriguing and intriguing and interesting is all the behind the scenes stuff. So like it would be really cool to have like a complex, heavy, not necessarily economic, maybe economic is what I'm going for, but sort of manufacturing and logistics game. So the war component would be a very quickly resolved thing, but it would be all about the manufacturing of the goods and bringing them to the front lines. What do you need to sustain this war effort? Because so many times, if you look back at like true historical battles, it often literally came down to a matter of logistics. Like, you know, the army that won typically was the one that had all their, you know, I's dotted and T's crossed and all the supplies there when they needed to do it. And there's been games that kind of approach that, like the supply lines games from Hollenspiel or Quartermaster General or those kind of things. But I would really like to see not only the logistics side, but like the manufacturing side, almost like, you know, belting a industrial resource conversion Euro game to this logistics game, and then the combat resolution aspect to it, like the battle based on all of these, to be just a very quick aspect to it, where that didn't outshine all of the feed the materials into it kind of thing. Like, I would be incredibly fascinated to play a game like that.
Sounds like a sweeping, something. Maybe Hollenspiel will put that one out for you, Andy. Maybe we'll get time to listen to this.
The closest I've ever felt like that, it literally are the supply lines games, but they're very simplistic compared to kind of the thing in my head. And, you know, well, there's a lot of people that are like, oh, well, everyone has a game design and this should be the one. No, that is literally never going to happen. I do not have the creativity to bring that to life, but, and I don't even know what conflict, like ancients, even modern, I don't care, World War. It would just be cool to have this industrial economic resource conversion combined with a logistics game. And then the outcome was the battle.
Cool. I thought of something here.
Okay.
To fill the space for what would be my last one. That's the staggering amount of garbage that as people are that I produce and that are produced by all the people around me. I think that there hasn't really been. I know there's been games about it, but I think that there's been a large amount of ones that kind of take a whimsical theme towards it. I think it'd be interesting to see, you know, a game that really kind of like, you know, fleshes out like waste removal and how there is a lot of science behind it. My favorite tour to landfill, and you know, there's a lot of interesting
or water reclamation. All that stuff's crazy. There's a lot there.
So anyway, that's mine. You know, I'd love to see like a really like a perennial game that's about the dealing with the staggering amount of waste that our society produces. And, you know, like I said, there's been certainly lots of games to touch on it, but I would love to see one that is, you know, I guess a new one on a higher level. And TC?
We'll wrap it up here. This is one of my wife's favorite games is Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. We've loved it. We've played it a lot. We're getting ready to go through the one box. We're getting ready to start the Weston Adventures, the Jack the Ripper, and there's another one. But, you know, we know that those are one-time things and you're done. I thought, but they did a Cthulhu one that I was like, I feel like they kind of missed the boat. But if I could have a Sherlock Holmes style game and have it based or inspired by Twin Peaks, I think that would be a knockout game, because
you know how quickly my wife would buy that.
You'd all be working together trying to solve a mystery that makes no sense, and like what's going on, like all this weird stuff you're reading, and you're trying to figure it out, what's going on, and have like a really strong David Lynch vibe to it, and have like this murder mystery series like Sherlock Holmes. I think would be fantastic. It would be like this weird mystery that you're working together, and then, you know, the next mission, it gets weirder and weirder and weirder, then it just ends, and you're like, what did we just play? I think that would be so cool. And I think The Cthulhu version came close, but I really want to play something that's maddening, that you're really trying to wrap your head around. And every time I've watched a David Lynch movie, it's stuck with me for days, especially Eraserhead. Oh my God, that movie haunted me for years of my life. But just a Twin Peaks style David Lynch murder mystery based in the Sherlock Holmes consulting detective style, I think would be pretty cool. But man, that'd be a lot of work, and you have to plot that whole thing out and have a fantastic setting to even pull it off. I don't even know if that'd be even possible, but wouldn't that be amazing, guys? Wouldn't that be cool?
That would be interesting. My wife would buy that in a minute. She loves Twin Peaks.
That's one of my shows I watched on TV like nonstop. This Twin Peaks. It just ended, and I saw the movie in '91. It was like, it was a prequel. I was like, wow. And then I saw The Return. I don't even know what that was about, but I loved it. Loved all of it.
Nice.
Okay, that's it. That's our topic.
Yeah.
It was enjoyable.
I have no idea where we were going with that now because you brought up David Lynch and now everybody's just confused.
Yeah. You're going to wake up in the morning and have a mutant baby in their bedroom.
To be fair, I was confused when I showed up. So,
my hype game for today is the small game called Rome by Red Raven Games. It's a very small game that is just basically a deck of cards and a few gems. You are basically matching up search patterns on cards to try to dig and kind of search for what seems to be like gems and other goods, but you're pretty much playing like the game of laying a card and kind of like, a card with a pattern on it in a certain way, and then laying all your other cards in certain ways to get as efficient searching as possible. It looked like a pretty simple, cool little game set in the same universe as like my beloved Near and Far. So Red Raven Games, of course, has wonderful art by Ryan Lockett, who's the individual behind the company.
Is he the designer of that one too, then?
Yes, I believe so. I believe it is his design. I'm pretty sure. So I didn't see any other designer's name anywhere, and I just kind of, I guess, took it for granted. But
I think he was. I was just curious if you know.
It's a small game though. It's not a bigger one. Like there's other ones. Like I hyped one of his like the one that's supposed to be up to like what is it, 2,400 minutes or something, 2,500 minutes, like 44 hours. Is its playtime. This is not that one. This is a very small box game, kind of. I'm yet to really be that blown away by any of his small games. I now have like Near and Far for, if you consider that a heavier, I don't consider it much of a heavier game, but I think that he really nailed like the sort of efficiency, mid-weight efficiency game perfectly. And I think that Rome, it looks interesting. It's spelled ROAM. But anyway, that's, I've probably already talked too much about it. It's a pretty small game, so go check it out. It's on Kickstarter now. I don't have much else to say. It looks like it's pretty simple.
I'll go here. I have to give a shout out because I ran across Tim Eisner at Gamestorm this year, and he surprised me and said that they were putting a March of the Ants expansion on Kickstarter called Empires of the Earth. Very simple expansion, just adds a whole bunch of mutation cards to the base game by a bunch of different artists. Looks pretty cool. If you haven't played March of the Ants, I highly recommend it, especially if you liked Eclipse, but you did not like how long Eclipse took to play. March of the Ants is it's a tourniqueted version of Eclipse with a lot of other extra features on it. So if you haven't played March of the Ants, give it a shot. And if you liked it, there's another expansion coming out. It is already funded. They needed like $10,000. They got close to 60. 10 days
it's
left.
A really small expansion.
Yeah, it's just cards. It's just a card. So it looks like a good expansion. I got to play it, and they had some pretty crazy mutations, and it made the game more enjoyable. So it's solid. Go check it out and get it if you have the game. If you haven't played March of the Ants, shame on you. You should.
Yeah, I have it, and I have the expansion. I like it quite a bit. I haven't yet jumped on board with the expansion simply because there's elements of that first expansion that I haven't gotten played. It kind of, I really want to try with some of those other enemies that you can play with and stuff. And so I'm not at the point where like I prevent myself, and I have really loose and terrible, like loose rules that I don't even follow. But like I won't buy another expansion for a game until I've played the previous expansion that I already bought. So, or at least until I've played it to the point where I feel like, oh yeah, that game, it's realistic for me to play it right now. You know, I'm like, I love March of the Ants. I just played it with the base game. I haven't really played it with the expansion that much, and I'd love to, but then adding an extra expansion is, and a lot of times what they do is they realize that not everybody is able to play the expansion that they came out with before because it's got like extra stuff that's more to explain. And so like, actually, let's make an expansion that would be a little easier just to integrate in and not worry about.
Now,
so maybe it's only missing out on.
I think it's $15, so it's not going to set you back too much. You can just throw it in the box and just open it up later, years from now.
Oh, cool. Well, TC, actually, while we were talking, I found $15 on the floor of my room right here.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
cool. You throw your money the same way my daughter does, then.
Oh, yeah. I'll just let you think that, Andy. It sounds good. All right, so Andy, the game that you're talking about sounds like a game I heard of before. I don't know. Are you hyping a game that already exists, or are you hyping one that's getting produced?
It's actually the Kickstarter, I believe, just ended or is going to end soon.
Okay.
So like the base prototypes for this came out to some reviewers a while ago, but it took them a while to get to the Kickstarter.
Oh, I remember this one coming up. Yeah, and it funded really, really, really well. It's one of those that was like funded like 200,000%.
Yeah. So the game I'm talking about is Age of Civilizations, which is weirdly for me, I'm looking at it as kind of that crunchy filler game kind of thing. So it boasts or attempts to be basically a civilization game for 1 to 4 players that you can play in 30 to 60 minutes, with really tight, tough decisions. It's kind of got a card row similar to like Through the Ages. And there's a set number of cards that come out and you can see them ahead of time and what's coming. And then there's like this bigger card you put above them that are 3 actions that will always be available. And then every round you slide that bigger one over, and then whatever was on, previous, like that action is no longer available. It's kind of cool because what you do is you then also have a card row of different civilizations, and you basically kind of like choose to end your current one to bring in a new one. And that's how you get your workers back. A lot of the worker placement pieces, like the workers disappear, and the only way you're going to get new workers is to take a new civ to overwrite your previous one. But at the bottom of the card, there are like abilities that persist as you like add them to civilizations. And when you take a new one, you get the choice of like, does this one overwrite my last one, or do I tuck it underneath and I'm just taking the little power at the bottom? But you could only draft so many new civilizations in the course of a game. And there are not, basically, I think you can have 3 civilizations and there's 6 rounds. So the timing element of when you choose one is big, can really do a lot to mess with you. And there's like wonders to complete, and there's like a ridiculous number of civilizations in this game from the Kickstarter. It's like 30, 40, maybe.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. It's crazy.
Yeah. But, but this looks to be, from what they're doing, like a box size, like maybe like Matainai or something. So like, something that's uber portable, but really crunchy, and plays solo as well as up to 4 players. But I get the gist from some of the things I've watched that kind of like Through the Ages, it might reward fewer players because there's not a whole lot you do when it's not your turn. So if you play with the full 4 players and people kind of like take their time with it, it could end up with some really big downtime issues. So like Board Game Geek, for those who have played it, says best at 2. But I think, you could probably play it at 3 would be just fine. Like 4, just like Through the Ages at 4, unless you got people that are really quick on their decisions. maybe not there. But it was like $27 and looked kind of intriguing to me. So I'm like, you know what? Fine. The game group kind of that we all go at is not as enthused about trains as I am. So I'm trying to find other games that we enjoy playing. They're like, just this bare map and cubes, and this is what you want to play. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? But, no, literally, really, like, there's games I'm trying to find that, like, other people would enjoy playing. My son William is getting to the point where he can maybe start to handle some crunchier stuff. So this looks like a fairly inexpensive Civ game that doesn't take too long. And I'm kind of looking at it as, crunchy or super filler is kind of what I expect to get out of it. If you are not a primarily sort of heavy game player or a long game player, this could easily, I think, be a regular game for you. But for me, I'm looking at it as like a super filler kind of deal. So, but it looks interesting. So we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does. I mean, they've added
really cool.
It gives me from what I've seen, a real Through the Ages vibe, but it's definitely not going to be at that level of complexity in time requirement. But it kind of feels like it stole some bones from Through the Ages. So.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it compares to like a lighter Through the Ages, and as well as like Flow of History was, fairly smaller Civ game that was a pretty big hit, and most of the times I saw it played in our local group and seemed like it did pretty well, at least in terms of doing a tight filler Civ game. So, well, it's been great here recording with you all and on this off night here on Monday night. Thank you for accommodating the schedule, and I hope that some of these dreams will come true someday.
We can always dream.
Joe's dream of finally getting sleep.
Sleep would be nice tonight.
And not constantly working.
Yeah,
my wife's having that dream now too, so I can sympathize.
Yeah, it's been a busy time. So, yep, I'm making it through it. I'm doing pretty well, and I appreciate the thoughts. So, anyway, yeah, it helps when it's nice weather. By the way, that way I don't have to suffer outside in the cold
today. Sir.
Yeah. So, thanks everybody for joining us here in the chat. We had Myrmes show up, and we had Norm. And Jerry as well, who gave some suggestions there to help continue our discussion. So anytime you had a good thought, think that could be you feeding us good thoughts, and we'll take credit for it if you just show up to our live chat. So if I have filled it, I don't know what will. All right, everybody, that's this week's episode of The Good, the Board, and the Ugly. Have a great week of gaming, and catch us next week here on The Good, the Board, and the Ugly.